Hey there, food fans. Welcome back to the Food for Thoughtcast with me, your host, Melissa Reagan. As always, you can call me Chef. I hope you're having an amazing week. This week, the Food for Thoughtcast has gone to the birds, and we are game for it. I'm going to make 50 puns during the recording of this, and no egrets. No egrets. Did you see what I did there? Joining us today is Steve, everybody's favorite good cooker, Steven Gonzalez. What's up?
Yeah. Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. How are you? Yeah, of course. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Great. Getting ready to talk about birds and wild game.
Would you say that you're game for anything?
Aha, I see what you did there.
I find it most fun to make the joke, point it out, explain it, and then make it again because nothing says persistent like, a lack of awareness.
At some point, you got to figure out how to throw in like the sitcom laugh. The ha ha ha.
Yes, I've got to get a laugh track on this thing for every single pun and fart jokes, right?
Exactly.
So before we get started, I have to ask you, just like I do every single time, what was the most amazing thing that you ate this week?
Today I went out to Odessa College, and one of my friends' moms happens to be a culinary instructor there. So they've got a little restaurant in there with their program. And so we had some wild mushroom risotto, a little bit of some braised short ribs. Everything was delicious. For culinary school, it was awesome, and it brought back a lot of memories. So that was the best thing I've eaten this week.
That sounds amazing. Yes, I do. I haven't had a braised short rib in a hot minute. And for those of you who don't know, Stephen and I went to culinary school together. There was also a cafe and restaurant on the premise there. And yeah, it does bring back a lot of memories. It's crazy. It feels like it was yesterday and 50 years ago, all at the same time.
I'm pushing 20 now, right? Ooh. Let's give our age away.
You shut your mouth. I won't have it. Oh man, that sounds like a delicious meal. I had some pancakes and bacon today. I'm not mad at it. I folded the bacon into the pancakes like a giant taco and dipped each breakfast taco into gravy and maple syrup, and I don't regret a thing.
So that sounds exquisite.
It's not mushroom risotto and braised short ribs, but hey, whatever makes you happy.
Exactly.
All right, so we're talking all about game birds. What are they? The best ways to prepare them, what we think goes best flavor-wise, etc., etc. So first, we have to start with what birds are considered game. So according to the internet, which makes it 1,000% true, you've got grouse, pheasant, quail, wild turkey. Any thoughts on that one? You think it's necessarily game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most definitely. If it's wild turkey, yeah. If they're farm raised, then it's no, not the same. There's two different sizes. Have you ever shot a wild turkey before?
Nope. Well, only at the bar.
Insert fun here.
Insert jokes here.
Laugh track.
The laugh track. I gotta get.
It's crazy
on that.
Because wild turkeys are a lot smaller than the commercially raised ones. And they have a slightly different flavor to them because of course, their diet and whatnot. So I would consider wild turkeys wild game.
Absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Moving down the list, you've got bobwhites, which are related to quail, the dusky grouse, partridge, the partridge family. Just kidding. Woodcock, which I'm going to say several times more because that's hilarious. Doves, ptarmigans.
Have to bleep that one,
No, I'm leaving it in. No, but it's not ptarmigan, but ptarmigan. If you're interested, ptarmigan. Sandhill cranes, the sage grouse, anything in the pigeon family, which sounds absolutely terrible. Snipe, which I thought was a joke, and teal, which is a type of duck. So here we are.
I have had a few of those. I can't say I've had all of those.
I haven't had all of these. Yeah, I haven't had all of them, but a few. Right. So specifically in Texas, we have most everything from the dove family: quail, ducks, geese. You have different types of doves: rock doves, white wing, quail, scaled quail, the bobwhite quail, turkeys, and pheasants. Do you have a
Yep.
favorite game bird, Steve?
So my favorite game bird to cook and eat is I love ducks. Anything duck is one of my favorites. When I'm at the ranch, when I'm hunting, of course, it's either dove or quail. I'm a big fan of that, but I also grew up with that. So being born and raised in Texas, we shoot them every Labor Day weekend, and that's what it's a tradition for me. It's
Sure.
actually better than Christmas because um, I can't explain it. It makes me feel really happy inside. Am I happy about killing innocent birds? Not necessarily, but I enjoy the camaraderie. I enjoy preparing the birds because everything we shoot, nothing goes to waste.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. No, I totally get that. And the only things that I shoot are the breeze, craps, and liquor. But but it's really no judgment on anybody, right? It has a lot to do with where you grew up, how you grew up.
Mhm.
I really enjoy eating it. I've just never been involved in the hunting part, right? But I love quail. I consider it to be kind of a gamey, tiny bird that's all made up of dark meat, I think is a fair
Pretty much, yeah.
assessment. And I
Yeah.
love duck a lot, but it has to be done well. The flavors have to be done correctly. And there's a lot of things you need to do in the preparation of duck to make sure that it comes out right. That it doesn't taste, muddy, or that you're not using the ingredients that are going to accentuate the gamey flavor, right? You want to cut
Yeah.
that in some of those birds. And then man, with quail, it's like bring on the bacon. you know
Yep. Now, anytime I cook duck, for some reason, duck breasts have to be cooked medium, and the legs of course, are well done, But I
Sure,
always have to
sure.
confit the legs, and then the duck breast, I always have to smoke them and then either grill them, pan fry them, finish them in the oven, whatever the case is. But I never cook duck breast well done.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to treat a larger game bird just like you would a chicken, right? And so if you cook chicken
Mhm.
breast well done, it becomes tough, it becomes dry. Even if you're using like a slow cooking moist method, it really has the tendency to become stringy, and the
Yeah.
same can be said about duck. And then talking about duck confit, using the legs for this, we have to jump back to the coming to terms episodes, part 1 and part 2. So confit, of course, means with fat. So typically, right, you're going to use that duck fat to slow cook and render out
Mhm.
more duck fat, basically, right? Or you could use another. Do you ever use like an alternate fat to cook the duck legs in?
I have used olive oil.
Hmm.
That's about all I've really used. Desperate times calls for desperate measures type of deal, and they still
Yeah,
came out really, really good. But of course, I will spend the money to get the duck fat, and of course, you can use it
yeah,
for quite some time, and then you can use it, and then use it again, then use it again, use it again, because
yeah.
it's more flavored each time you use it. So I'm always a fan of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with any kind of fat that you're using in the kitchen, it's just like cooking with it properly, right? Not taking it past the smoke point or where it's going to taste burnt, cooling it properly, and then straining it so that it doesn't get any like funky bacteria or any sort of like weird off flavors. But man, duck
Yeah,
fat is a thing that it's like the gift that keeps on giving.
exactly.
If you use it
I
for
agree
eggs,
100%.
potatoes, anything.
Oh yeah, starches and duck fat; those two just go hand in hand. I don't think there's a better pairing. I think it's better than peanut butter and jelly, personally.
What? Well, we might have to
Duck
throw
fat
down
and
about that,
starch.
but
Oh, yeah. And then so what you
hey,
do is you get your peanut butter and jelly sandwich and then pan fry that with some duck fat. Oh,
okay.
it's
Well, the
pretty
podcast
good.
is over because I have to go do that right now, like right this minute.
Thanks for listening,
Um,
everyone. We'll see you
that's
next
it.
week.
Thanks for listening. Melissa's hungry now, and she's gonna go make a duck fat grilled peanut butter jelly sandwich. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Some more BA cheese in the middle. Oh man, stop. It sounds really really good. So when we're talking about game, we have to first talk about how you treat the meat and each part of the bird when you're getting ready to cook it. So do you have any tips or tricks for cleaning a game bird, maybe that you have killed yourself?
Traditionally, what we do is we just breast them. If you really want to take the time to remove all the feathers and whatnot, it's a time consuming process, or as I like to call a labor of love.
Sure.
You can definitely do it that way, where you can just kind of remove the legs after you're done, and then you can grill those up. Again, a lot of the times what we do is we'll just breast them, and I know I just said nothing goes to waste, so I'm the one that's like, hey, save me some legs so that way I can have those, and then you all keep all the dove breasts and
Right.
whatnot. But
Right.
I mean, get it on ice as fast as you possibly can, as far as taking care of it and things like that, even though, it's a little bit more forgiving because they were warm, just a few minutes earlier.
Right. Right. This is really taking the entire process into your own hands quite literally. So you don't have to worry about something being left at room temperature too long. It's not getting to you by way of a truck. You're not getting it from a
Mhm.
local farm or ranch, right? This is basically you are the butcher and seller and manufacturer from beginning to end. And so just
Exactly. And it
following the
has
good
a
food hygiene rules, right? Like wash your
exactly.
hands, keep it chilled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you'll notice it has a cleaner flavor to it because it hasn't gone through all those different processes. So it goes directly from, in maybe not farm to table in this, but from air to plate, I guess you could
Sure.
say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, like air to dirt to fridge to plate.
Right. And if you're lucky, you can catch it while it's falling, but I don't recommend trying that.
I don't know. Well, maybe depending on where and how you get it, it's like air, ground, dog's mouth, cooler
No, we don't use
plate. I don't
dogs.
know.
We
Like,
go
I don't know.
we
I
go
don't
pick
know.
them up ourselves. I will say though, so this year we were hunting at my dad's ranch, and one of his buddies got a bird, and my dad wasn't paying attention. He's being, the good host, and he actually got hit in the head with a falling bird.
Oh no.
He, well, I mean, fortunately it wasn't enough to like knock him out or nothing like that. Like he felt a little bit embarrassed more than anything else because he was like picking up shotgun shells, things like that, and you just hear a boom, and you just hear my dad say, "Ow," you know. That was a
That's really
first.
that it sounds like a crane in the neck, if you ask me. I couldn't help it. I
Insert
couldn't help
laugh track here.
it. Insert laugh track here, please. Somebody out there, I
Right.
don't know. I might need a new producer. We've got to put a laugh track in this thing. So anyhow, so if you are cleaning the small birds, is there anything you recommend in the way of marinade?
For marinating, I mean, you can use whatever you want. I would just say be careful if you use anything acidic. Like I know a
Hmm.
lot of people love to use vinaigrettes and whatnot, like for marinades, like for beef and things like that.
Sure.
You can do that, but I don't recommend doing it for very long. In my opinion, 10 out of 10 times, a simple salt and pepper is always the way to go.
Right.
But and then maybe some olive oil. But even then, you don't even need all that.
Right.
Because they have, again, going back to that clean flavor, like you don't really need to add a whole lot of extra ingredients for it to be a good tasting piece of meat.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you on the whole. I think that for people who are really turned off by gaminess, it kind of falls under that umami when you're talking about the five different tastes. And so you might need a little fat or acid to cut that richness, but you want to add it on the back end of the recipe. And so something I tell people that is, if they want to use acid in a marinade, they need to change their mindset about what that acid actually is. And so much like I will soak a freshwater fish such as catfish in like buttermilk the night before, what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing is you're letting the lactic acid break down some of those off taste. And I feel like that same approach works really well for things like pheasant and quail and even duck, depending on how you're going to use it. So it's not an acid like vinegar per se, and it's not going to toughen the meat, but that lactic acid that's in the milk is going to help
Yeah.
tenderize, and then it takes some of those like off flavors away. But like you said, if you're getting it straight from a hunt, right, it's not going to perhaps taste as gamey because it's not going to sit as long. And so I think salt and pepper is a really great place to start. One thing that I like to use with game birds is juniper berries. Juniper berries have
I do like that.
a little
Yeah.
floral. Yeah, they've got a little floral thing going
Yeah.
on, and a little astringent. So it's kind of like the same idea as like when you use wine in a marinade, but
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the game birds are so small, you wouldn't want to hit them with wine. You'd be turning it into jerky before you had a chance to cook it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
But so I do like the juniper berry with game birds. I also enjoy fruit with my game birds. Now, even though I'm saying as far as preparing it, you just need salt and pepper, keep
right.
that part simple. But if you have like a good little, I've always enjoyed like blueberry and vodka sauces or
Yeah,
plum
absolutely.
and miso, things like that.
Hmm.
I feel things to complement the uh, the final product go a long way.
Right. I mean, absolutely. And so you recently made some white wing dove, right?
Yes,
Tell
I
us
did. I
about
had
that.
some left over. Yeah, what we did was I cut every single breast in half, so each one had just one, and I like blah 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 blah. I like to do plum and miso with that. For me, plum and miso, they are a very unusual pairing together, but they make sense when it's done right. And so, growing up in South Texas and the border, even Texas, period, it's always dove breast, bacon, jalapeno, and cream cheese, and that's a staple anywhere you go. Anytime you go hunting, someone's going to bring those
Right.
poppers.
Right.
So I kind of went a different direction with that, and I did plum miso, uh, the dove breast, and bacon. And what I did was, of course, you still season your dove breast. You get that plum with that. You get a little bit of miso paste, and you rub it on the bacon. Now, granted, bacon's already very salty, so people
Right.
listening, there's a method to the madness. What happens is that miso paste is going to warm up and get into the plum. It's going to get into the dove breast. And so when you're done cooking it, the final product is just fantastic. It's not overly salty, again, because we're being cautious with what kind of seasonings and how much we're using.
Right.
But I mean, you can grill it, you can air fry it, you can deep fry it. I mean, there's so many different ways to prepare it. And I did not have my smoker set up, so I just threw them all in the oven, and they were delicious.
I mean, it sounds incredible. And so for the listeners, what color of miso paste did you use?
I used the yellow miso paste where it's almost like
Hmm.
golden, very
Hmm.
rich, very dark. And
Yeah.
again, I was just kind of getting my fingers and just getting a little bit on my finger and rubbing it up against that bacon, and it was amazing.
Right. I mean, it really sounds insane. So in this particular recipe, did you still salt and pepper the dove breast before?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
you got to do both sides. Well, actually, I used more of a garlic pepper. Of course, there's
Right.
still a little bit of salt in there,
Right.
so you just have to be careful with how much you're using. Of course, if you've got like a different type of, everyone's got like their own favorite brand of seasonings. Some people like that carnivore brand. Some people have
Yeah, sure.
like their own homemade blend, and just be cautious with how much you're using, especially if it's very salt heavy.
Right. No, totally. I mean, so there's all those Kinder spice blends out there. They
Hmm.
make really good combinations that would be really good with any kind of meat, including game birds. And then if somebody's watching their sodium intake, Dano's is always a really good alternative.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do one or the other, right? But I think you're right in establishing that foundation of like basic seasoning. Because the
Hmm.
pepper is going to play really well against the fat and the bacon, and then I really love the science of using miso because it's a fermented item, it has an acidic component of its own. Even though we think
Yeah.
about it as like it's an umami taste, right, that you get from this soybean mixture, but it's still acting on the protein in a way that it's not only going to create its own glaze, but it's going to tenderize as well. And then when you talk about fruit, I mean, plums, you're getting those tannins from the skin in the plums. It's the tannins are like, what makes a red wine, it's kind of like smack your lips, like that dry taste,
Hmm.
on the back end,
Yep.
right? And so even if you're not a wine drinker, just knowing how those kinds of fruits interact with game is really, really fascinating because the tannins in the skin and the darker fruits, dried fruits and stone fruits, man, they really play well off of that gamey flavor.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And something that I also have to do is you also have to season your bacon as well, because it's, believe it or not, it makes a big difference. If you rely on the saltiness from the bacon, you're going to be disappointed with the final product. You still have to season your bacon. It sounds crazy, but it's true.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. It's like you and I always say, you have to create layers of flavor, and
Hmm.
it's not
Yep.
just making things salty, right? It's about building flavors on top of each other. And I think it's especially important when you're cooking with game birds,
Yeah.
100%, because you've got to attack this from all angles. You don't want to season it with something that's going to bring out the gaminess of it. And that can be a real
Right.
turnoff if somebody's eating it for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I always say, salt brings out the natural flavors, pepper enhances those flavors, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
if for those people listening who are like, oh, you just throw salt on it, it's like, well, there's a little bit more science behind it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
then
then the other thing, go
tasting it
ahead.
at every stage of the way. Sorry, tasting it at every stage of the way is so
Oh, yeah.
important.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not opposed to eating raw bacon. I actually like a little bit here and there. No joke. Of course, raw plums, they're always good. But,
Right.
I haven't gotten to the point where I'm ready to eat like raw dove breast, I'm not quite there yet, but getting there.
Not
Um,
not quite yet, but that's one of the reasons, right? Like we as chefs like to use kosher salt at least, right? Because
yep.
it's big enough to where you're able to see if you already seasoned something, and so it's a very visual
Hmm.
process, right? Like you're not going to taste raw pheasant or raw dove, or raw duck. I mean, if that's your thing, like go after it, but I'm not doing it, right? And so you want to be able to
Yeah.
see what you seasoned and see that it's covered sufficiently.
Yeah, exactly. And then what I also have noticed, if you're going to do stuff like that, like where you make your poppers, you have to use a real thin cut bacon, because if you use something real thick, by the time that your bacon's done cooking, you've just annihilated your game bird. Like it's just dry, it's tough, it's chewy, and it tastes like liver.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
absolutely. I mean, and that's another thing, right? Is these game birds, with the exception of a turkey or geese, obviously, right? They're small. You're talking about really
Yep.
really small. So you for quail, for instance, right? You're talking about maybe two or three per serving. It depends on what
Hmm.
you're doing with it, right? But you have got to consider you're not roasting these low and slow. You will turn it into a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
Um, even if it's more easily identified as dark meat versus white meat, right? Like if you're comparing it to a chicken, but a chicken is something that benefits. It has a fat, right? And it has like a thick skin, and it has that visceral fat that in a long and slow roasting process, it's basting itself. With these game birds, you've got to give them some help, hence the bacon, right?
Yeah.
So
Most definitely.
for sure, for sure. I want to give a little shout out to my dad. Hi, Dad. My dad taught me this a venison recipe that I feel like really works beautifully with quail as well. And
Okay.
so the idea being that you will take that piece of backstrap and stud it with garlic, which is on its own acidic. You will
Hmm.
stud it with dill pickle slices, which sounds strange, but hear me out. You wrap the entire thing in bacon, and then you use a little cream of mushroom soup. Well, it has all the components we just mentioned, right? It's a couple of different types of acids, the fat, the saltiness from the bacon, and then the umami flavor from the mushrooms. It works really well for quail as well. The only spin that I put on it is that I will split the quail and stuff them with pork breakfast sausage.
Huh.
So, yeah.
It's so being from South Texas, what we do with our quail is we'll stuff them with chorizo and pear, you
Oh my
know,
gosh, that sounds incredible.
because we always got to add our Mexican twist
That's
on it.
well, and for
And
me, I'm like,
actually, a good friend of mine, Chef Ernie, who was in a previous
yeah,
episode, he's the one that showed me that. And I just thought he would stuff quail with chorizo, pear, and basmati rice. And that was just,
man.
it worked so well.
It sounds incredible. I mean, for me, I'm always chasing that sweet, spicy, salty, sweet, the contrasting flavors, the
Hmm.
levels of the different layers of flavor in every dish. Right? I have to have something, a little bit of something in everything, or to me, it's just boring.
Yeah, makes
So,
sense.
man, chorizo and pear sounds insane. I love that.
It does. And then traditionally with the chorizo, all that spice with that sweetness of the pear, as long as the pear's not overcooked and it has just a little bite left to it, oh, it's just a great flavor put together. The texture is awesome. And then, of course, when you put it with that wild game bird, that is one of my favorites.
And I can't really imagine, what would happen if you overcook the pear, right? I assume in my mind right now, it really sounds like the pear needs to have a little bite to it, kind of like pasta.
Mhm.
Not super,
Yeah.
I don't like super al dente pasta, but it needs to have a little bit of texture. Because to me, I'm like, if you overcook pear and it's with chorizo, it's like now you got like sausage with applesauce. Like it doesn't sound great, So
So what you do is you cook your chorizo. When all the fat renders out, you take that out, and then you use
mhm,
that fat to just get a quick little saute on your pear. And so
yeah,
you do it all, in steps. And when it all comes together at the very end, it's just magic. You know,
it
that's the
sounds
beauty of it.
it sounds so good. It sounds incredible.
Oh, it was one of my favorite dishes that Ernie put together.
Well, for smaller game birds, when we talk about, um, you know, bringing out the right flavors and avoiding the wrong flavors, some generally kind of commonly accepted like things to avoid are heavy citrus because the citric acid is going to bring out the wrong flavor.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. It's
And
almost um it's almost like when you overcook like a ceviche in acid and it's just tough,
yes,
it's chewy,
it's
it
a
doesn't
rubber
taste
band.
right, it's almost metallic. Yeah, that
Hmm.
you'll have the same exact results with if you do that, a heavier acidic flavor with your game birds. I've never been a fan of that. So again, you balance that out. I remember growing up in the industry, and another fantastic chef that I worked with turned me on to vodka and blueberry. And once he was able to explain why, kind of gave me a rundown of how to do it, I've never looked back. Ever since then, it's just like this makes sense. Nothing else really makes sense with game birds. And it's not that you're like
Right.
some people will say, oh, it's a sweeter meat, but no, it's just a very well balanced piece of meat.
Right. I mean, you need a little acidity, but you need the right application and
Yeah.
the sweetness and fruits that are like stone fruits or thought to be fall fruits or really blueberries I feel are really set apart from other berries. They are ruddy, right? They have a complexity
Mhm.
that, strawberries are like bright and sweet. Blueberries have their own umami. They can taste kind of earthy,
Yeah.
right? And that's that same idea, but like generally, stone fruit, plums, peaches, apricots. Those are things that have been paired with small to large game birds since the beginning. And then
Hmm.
the larger the bird gets, the more leeway you have with the acidity. So that's why like duck à l'orange works so well, but duck has so much more fat on it than something like a quail.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when you do your duck breast, do you leave the skin on or do you take it off?
It depends on what I'm using it for. If I am leaving it on, I'm going to score it and sear it because I like the crispy skin.
Hmm.
In the very like one-off situations where I'm going to make like let's say I'm making like endive leaves stuffed with like cranberry goat cheese duck salad. It's like a cold
Uh-huh.
cooked type deal. Then I'm taking the skin off because that's weird. You know?
Makes sense. Yeah. I
Yeah.
do like a cold smoked duck. What I used to do is I would remove the skin and I would render out all that fat until
Right.
that skin was real crispy, and then you slice it real thin, and then you have like a duck chicharron. So
Like
then you can add that
cracklins.
with your salad.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, or duck cracklings, whatever you want to call it. And then you put that like on top, with maybe like some pumpkin seeds or something like that. And that way you get that nice little extra crunch texture to it. And that way you're really utilizing every bit of that duck breast, you know?
Yeah, man, that sounds incredible. I love a recipe where you're using every bit of everything, and it's a style of cooking that we've gotten away from, especially
Oh
as
yeah.
more generations of people have no idea where their food comes from. And so, I mean, it sounds rather privileged for me to say that. If I had to live in the woods, I would starve to death because I don't know where tacos or sandwiches hide or live. Um, I'm not saying that I could go out with a crossbow or a gun and be able to feed myself, but I do understand like how to process the food from its natural state. Right now, getting it there, I don't know if I'd have to wrestle a squirrel to the ground or what, but like, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
love the idea of cooking like snout to tail, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit, I won't say rewarding because some people might misconstrue what I'm saying, but it's definitely you feel different when you kill the animal yourself, you
Yep.
process it yourself, and you use as much stuff as you possibly can. Like for example, I want to say 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago, I went to my dad's ranch. We killed a pig. You gut it, and then I kept like the liver. I kept
Yeah,
the
of course.
heart, things like that. Now, I'm not. I do like offal, but I don't know how to cook, like for example, lung or brains, things like that. It's not that that's where I draw the line. It's just that I've never prepared those myself. But
Yeah, sure.
everything else from snout to tail was utilized. Of course, the
Right.
backstrap. I tried to make a ham. It like where I actually like salt cured it and everything. It was really good. And I still have some all these years later. I'm petrified to eat them, but at this point, it's almost like, what? I know I need to just throw it
It's
away,
it,
but it
it's
looks cool. It's a story.
it's
And
petrified or you're petrified.
both, yes, definitely both. Um, but like I prepared. I made head cheese. I used out of the head. I cooked the ears. I even cooked the tail too. Like all that
Right.
stuff is out of this world. And like I said, just knowing that I'm the one, like this was all me.
Sure. Sure.
So if I was ever stuck in the woods and I had like a bow and arrow or a shot or a gun or something, I might be able to survive for a little while, but you know,
Right.
I
Right.
have to actually be good at shooting and using a bow and arrow and stuff. I'm not the best.
Well, I mean, I think it's an incredible privilege for us as people, period, right? That we can sit there and hypothesize this situation where we would be able to like live off the land, right? Luckily, we don't have to do that, but I think getting intimate with your food supply is like kind of the next best thing. Just knowing what you can use, what you shouldn't use, and how to make it taste really good is just it's a really good skill to have all the way around. And then
Yeah,
speaking of like bits and bobs and parts and pieces, have you ever had like duck tongue? Is that a thing
I
that you
have.
mess with?
Yes, actually,
Yeah,
I have. I've never
yeah,
prepared it myself, but I've eaten it, and it's delicious.
really
It's the
good.
same thing as like having chicken feet. Like it's crazy because there's actually like little bones and stuff in them, and
Right.
so you're eating this thing like a tongue, and you think there shouldn't be anything hard in here, but yet there is. And when it's done right,
Yeah.
oh, magic.
Yeah, I never really understood like that final texture of a duck tongue. It was odd, but it tasted great. Now, chicken feet is not something that I mess with. I actually use them as dog treats, but I don't enjoy it's something about the gelatinous. It's just like, oof, I don't like it. But
I
hey,
think that's why I like them so much.
if that's your cup of tea, then like by all means, you can have my portion, okay?
Whenever we go to San Antonio and I get a chance to eat dim sum, I always go after the chicken feet because it's just fantastic. The way that they cook them, the way that they season them, and the sauce that goes with it, it's just out of this world. And of course, it's kind of gross because you're like spitting out little tiny bones here and there. But at the end of the day, I just can't get enough of them.
I mean, you know, it might be something I could try again at a different time in my life and have it be prepared differently. Like, be
Yeah.
exposed to it in a different setting, and then maybe it'll become my favorite thing. You
I
know?
will circle back to you mentioned duck à l'orange, and I haven't made that in years, but that is still one of my favorites to this day. And what I also like to do is I'll take out the actual orange, like the juice on it, and I'll try different flavors like peaches and things like that. And I'm usually never disappointed. And I don't know what made me think of that right now, but I think it's just because you mentioned duck à l'orange, and I remember learning
Yeah,
that in
I
culinary
mean,
school. Do you remember that?
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of those timeless classic recipes, and I think everybody learns it in culinary school. I will make a cheater version every once in a while. Now, it's not too often that I'm getting my hands on duck breast, but every once in a while there'll be a really good deal, like over at Central Market or Whole Foods or
Mhm.
somewhere like that. And I'll make a really simple orange pan sauce with a little wine to deglaze. I'll
Yeah,
caramelize a couple of orange slices. I might throw some golden raisins in there, and then I'm just searing the duck breast, scoring that skin like in a diamond pattern down
yeah.
to the flesh, right? And then gonna sear it until it's super crispy and golden brown, and then I'm gonna kind of braise it until it's. I cook my duck à l'orange. It would be overcooked if it was served in a restaurant. To be quite
Yeah.
frank with you, but that's what I like at home. So yeah.
If I did that at a restaurant, I would probably pre-confit all the duck legs. I would just
Mm-hmm.
do like straight up duck legs, and then
Mm-hmm.
I would probably cook the duck breast, a la minute, and but yeah, I would have that sauce like you make that pan sauce, and then you
Yeah.
just kind of for me, I would remove that skin so that way I could do like the that crunchy crackling things like that.
Right.
But I
I know.
think
I totally get it.
yeah. Now, what would you serve it with? Would it be like haricot verts? Would it be asparagus? Would it be like what would you do?
It's probably going to be like a wild rice blend, not straight wild rice because I'm not a super fan of that texture, but something earthy and nutty, like a couscous or
I could see a
like a
couscous.
white and wild rice combination that I'm going to play on the fruit flavors again, like a dried cranberries, golden raisins, something like that. Maybe throw like a pecan in there, an almond. Um, but yeah, it's so good.
I would probably do like some sort of real crispy like potato, like Anna potatoes and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I actually don't like green beans or haricot verts. Well, I mean, pretty much the same thing, but I would probably use those for a restaurant setting. Now, if I was making it at home, I would probably try some different. Um, I'd probably do broccolini or something. But
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like really strong greens that can stand up to that flavor because it's so umami. Like duck has
yeah,
such a specific flavor profile that you can get a little crazy with the sides. Like you might do like a purple or blue fingerling maybe as a different play on it. If you weren't doing like the Pomzana, but definitely like a really good way to utilize the duck fat. And then I'm super over haricot vert. I think I ate so many of them in culinary school because it was like what they put with everything that it just I now on the flip side of that, I'm not a flat, broad, like Italian green bean type of gal either. Like I like
yeah.
a southern, like more closer to a string bean with like bacon and onions, and but then you have to cook it so long that it's not green anymore. So yeah,
Right?
but there's something like squeaky and squishy about haricot. I'm just not down for that, to be quite honest. Unless they're pickled. Now, if they're pickled all day long, like quick pickled or canned, yeah, because they're
Still
crunchy.
can't do it. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe.
that's because you're a dill hater. That's why.
Well, yeah, that's true. You know what though? I am coming around to dill
I know.
pickles.
I'm
Okay,
so I'm
slowly but
so proud
surely.
of you. I'm
There
so
will
proud of
be
you.
a time where we talk about dill pickles, and I will say I like them a lot, but we're not there yet. Baby steps, one step
Right, right.
forward and two steps back.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's all a
yeah,
journey, and you might have detours along the way, right? But for the listeners, I want to talk about a little bit why duck à l'orange works so well. Like we just told you, hey, for smaller game birds, you don't want to use too much citrus because of the way that citric acid acts upon meat. But the reason that the orange sauce works so well is because it's based on this technique or sauce called a gastrique, which is equal parts of sugar and acid. So in this case, you might use like orange juice, sugar, and like red wine vinegar, right? But you're not marinating the duck in that, and that's why it doesn't make it tough. You're using it to finish at the end.
do
So
you remember
yeah,
making that in culinary school and then using some Grand Marnier with that?
yes, yep.
I remember that. I don't necessarily remember doing it as a gastrique. I could have sworn that we did like the Monte Albert where
Well, yeah,
we threw some
there's
butter.
a
If I
couple
remember
ways you can
correctly.
go. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's like traditionally it's like a orange pan sauce that's finished with
Yeah.
butter. I mean, maybe you flambe it. It really has been almost 20 years, Steve.
Yeah.
Um,
It's been a while.
but you know, the gastrique is the direction that I go with mine. So
Yeah. And that à l'orange sauce, believe it or not, goes great with seafood too. Have you ever tried it with scallops? Scallops à l'orange?
I haven't done scallops,
Oh, buddy.
but I've done trout. So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
just good. Yeah. That sauce is just amazing. But yeah, I never really thought of it as a gastrique. Like I said, I always thought of
yeah,
it as like a butter finishing sauce. But now, like, if I did it, I would probably do apple cider vinegar because to me it's a little bit more mellow than like red wine vinegar.
yeah. No,
I
I
know
totally
it
get it.
doesn't, but I can
Well,
see that now. It's
I
making my
think
mouth water.
I think it depends on what you're using for sweetness, right? So you're 100% right. Traditionally, in the French way, that's a pan sauce
Okay,
that you create. My take on it at the house, right, is going to be more of the gastrique direction because I
gotcha.
want to utilize some other kind of acid. So, for example, right, if I was going to garnish it with cranberries, I would soak them in the red wine vinegar first, rehydrate them, and then saute them with whatever I was going to, put with the duck, and then take it from there. Like the Grand Marnier is an excellent touch because it's going to provide some depth that like regular old orange juice doesn't. You
Yeah,
know,
for yours, what I think would make it even more out out of this world would be adding like a beet to it and letting that earthiness
yeah,
complement like the cranberries and all that stuff like you were talking about.
yeah.
I think, and not only that, but it would make it such a beautiful color red
Oh yeah, no,
that
totally.
yeah.
And then it moves me the other direction. Now I want confit, any type of game bird leg with like beets, cranberries, goat cheese on a salad with walnuts, and like that's what's making me. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could do like some quail eggs right now, but just throw them on a hot grill to where like when you bite into them, all that juice just pops into your mouth, almost like having like a sausage, like with a real strong casing, where where you get that
Yes.
snap when you bite into it. That sounds pretty good right about now.
So for those of you Asian food lovers who have never done like the quail leg shots when you're eating ramen noodles, no, yeah, ramen.
Mhm.
You're missing out. Quail egg shooter is a delicious, beautiful thing. So good.
Sounds like I'm gonna have
So
to
good.
try that. I don't think I've ever had that.
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you go, they can either be pasteurized or like lightly coddled. It's definitely a little bit less than a 6-minute egg. You can shoot them out of the shell with the top broken off, or you can put it into your ramen and then stir it in more like an egg drop situation, which is two different types of Asian cuisine. Sorry if that's offensive, but whatever. But yeah, so yeah,
You piqued my interest, and now you have my attention.
yes, so good. How many quail eggs do you think it takes to equal a chicken egg? This is a legitimate question because I have no idea.
About 17. I'm kidding.
17.
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe like 6. Shoot, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean,
I've never thought about that.
so because it takes like 13 chicken eggs to equal an ostrich egg, I think, right?
Can you imagine eating just one whole ostrich egg all
No,
by yourself?
no,
I couldn't either.
I can't. I have to be in the mood for eggs, and they have to be prepared a certain way, and scramble is not it. So
I still like scrambled eggs, but it, it has to be done. Like it depends on the application. Am I gonna have an egg taco? Then you
right.
scrambled egg. Everything else is like no, over easy, sunny side, poached.
Right. So when we look at the list of game birds, are there any that you haven't tried that you want to try?
Eagle. I'm kidding.
Oh,
Can you
gosh.
imagine? So let me tell you why I just got arrested. All right. I want to say so. I've had goose. Woodcock sounds pretty good.
Woodcock.
Wood bleep sounds really good. But I mean, what were some of the other ones that you mentioned?
So partridge, pheasant,
I don't think I've ever had
grouse.
partridge. I've had grouse. I like grouse.
Would you eat a pigeon? A dirty sky
Oh yeah,
rat?
I would totally eat it. Yeah,
Ugh.
I would totally eat it. So you're talking to someone who had a horse burger in Sicily just to say that he's had a horse burger.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I get
So
it.
I would do it just to say I've had it. But If you ever have you ever heard of Art Culinaire magazine?
Maybe. I
So
don't know.
it's this really fancy, awesome, out of this world magazine that looks
Sure.
like a book. And I have one. I think I forgot which magazine it was or which what's the word I'm looking for. Anyways, there was
Edition,
a
edition,
article. Yes,
edition.
which edition it was. Yeah,
Hmm.
thank you. But there was a chef who was doing pigeon, and he said it was one of his top selling items, and people loved it. Sounds crazy, but I would totally try it. I can remember being a kid, I'd go to work with my dad. Again, my dad worked in the oil field, South
Right.
Texas. My dad, very outdoorsy. He would give my brother and myself BB guns, and he would say, okay, when we get to certain locations, there's a lot of pigeons in there. They cause, they're a nuisance, shoot them. So we would shoot them and stuff, and we would kill a handful of them. And I never thought anything of it, because I didn't know. I was like 6 years old, 7 years old, and my dad told me there are these guys who live in close by, and they come pick up all the birds. So we're doing them a favor because they would eat them, and
Right.
and I can remember being a kid thinking, oh, that's gross. And as I got older, I thought, well, that sounds kind of legit. I should try it. I still haven't tried pigeon to this day, but I am not opposed to it.
Nice. I mean, I've never cooked one, but I guess I could just wing it.
Ha ha! Laugh track, laugh track, laugh track.
Laugh track. Hold for applause. So I have only had pheasant as part of a terrine that had other meat in it, like mainly duck, and so I don't really know
Mhm.
if I was able to taste it apart from the duck and everything else that was in there. And then plenty of quail, lots of dove. My dad will do dove in the same way that you were describing, but more closer to a shrimp brochette, so more like a pepper jack
Gotcha.
jalapeno split down the back, or through the breast, and then bacon wrapped.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, of course, lots of. I could never tell you if any turkey I ate was ever wild. And then, but I love turkey. Geese are great. They're a little bit strong for me though, just a
They
little.
I'm a little bit reluctant with goose. I mean, like I've eaten it and I prepared it, but I'm always scared that it's going to be tough
Yeah,
because it's a bigger hunk of meat, and of course it's all red meat like you were talking about earlier.
yeah.
And I feel like it's going to come out either really tough or really raw. And I've been able to cook it just right, but that was years ago. So if you put it in front of me again today and said, "Hey, you need to cook this," I would be a little bit stumped, but of course we'd figure it out.
I mean, I really feel like you can treat it like a duck based on what I've seen and read. But I've never really successfully cooked it to where this was something I would be like, yeah, I want to cook that again and eat it again. It was just kind of like, oh, well, I did it and I tasted it, and like, If any of the listeners out there have any tips and tricks of their own for cooking pheasant or grouse or partridge or pigeons or geese, wild turkeys, duck, let us know. Let us know. We want to hear from you. The Food for Thoughtcast, Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. I actually have a friend of mine, or my dad's friend, who I met recently, he's a wild turkey hunter, and he'll do like the turkey poppers and stuff like that. But there it's an entire sport. It's the same thing as like hunting deer or things like that. Like they keep what is the neck part of the
Right. The
turkey
waddle.
as kind of like their trophy, if you will. And
Oh,
he was telling me, yeah, that's how I prepare my turkey. Like you breast them, and then he just does like turkey poppers. I asked him, well, how do you prepare like the legs? And he said, a lot of the times the legs are a little bit too tough. It's too stringy.
right.
A lot of or not tendons.
Well, I mean, if they're
Just
wild, they're going to move around,
yeah,
Oh, there's definitely tendons in turkey legs. It's one of the least
yeah,
enjoyable parts of eating a turkey
yeah.
leg at the fair or the Renaissance Festival is like
Hmm.
you kind of work your way through it. And then after a while, it's like, what is all this crap inside here?
Yeah, exactly. But I that's something I never really thought about doing, like turkey poppers. It either
I
way, it's still good.
I would have to see. a wild turkey and the size of this thing? Like, how big is the popper? Maybe this sounds ignorant, but I truly have no idea. Like, how
So
many would you
wild
get out of?
turkeys are a lot smaller
Yeah,
again because
sure.
they're not just pumped full of steroids and hormones and stuff like that. But they can get big. Don't get me wrong, but just height.
So what's
They're
a
not.
lot smaller in terms of like Cornish game hen? Small?
No, 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 no. I mean,
Ch-
it's kind
Domestic
of like
chicken? Small?
a big a chicken, probably like twice the size of a chicken.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, there's still a good little amount of meat on there to where you can, have a good meal, but
Right.
it's just not as big as like you would get like the 20-pound turkeys, the 25-pound turkeys, things like that.
Right. Right. It's not something you're winning in a grocery store contest.
Yeah, exactly. That's one where if you live off the land and you get one, you're happy as can be, and you know exactly what you got. Same
Right.
thing. It's a clean taste as well because I've
Yeah.
had wild turkey before, and yeah, I would do it again.
I know exactly where to find wild turkey.
In your pantry?
It's about 3 bottles down from the Jack Daniels. That's a liquor joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. I actually do
That's
like to use wild turkey for my sauces and stuff like that. Like if I'm doing like a whiskey sauce with the fruit and the stone fruit and stuff like that, it always comes out really well.
yeah. I mean, you're going to get all the caramel notes, and the alcohol is going to burn off. It's going to concentrate the sugar, so it
You just
totally
have to be
tracks.
careful when you set it on fire.
Yeah.
It's the
It
only thing.
it totally tracks, and that's a hunting joke. That's how you bring it full circle, everybody. The golf clap.
A
Oh,
round of applause.
he's over there flapping his wings for me. There we go. Um, hey, so Steve, it's been a pleasure having you on today. What's going on in your world as far as chefstevengonzalez.com, and where can we find you?
As far as what's going on, we're still cooking, having fun in the kitchen, showing people how to make excellent, easy meals. Find me on YouTube, Chef Steven Gonzalez. Find me on Facebook, same thing, Chef Steven Gonzalez. Chef Stegon's on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Go to chefstevengonzalez.com. If you haven't gotten a copy of my cookbook, you need to, because there's a lot of good recipes and ideas. So yeah, that's what's going on.
Absolutely. The man is not wrong. I hope you enjoyed listening today. Thank you so much.